Good night. AJ Mahar here. By the way, I always forget to say this. If you get some value from my content, please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe, click the notification bell, hit all. Your video really struck a chord with me. I'm currently going through a breakup with my girlfriend of 3 years who has BPD. Throughout our relationship, we experienced many intense conflicts, both big and small, which inevitably led to my compromise and efforts to mend things. However, the situation only seemed to escalate. Yeah, and it's interesting how many people with BPD will have that escalating pushback, the pushing you away response to your trying hard to make it work. And many reasons for that, but among them is when people with BPD hit the splitted evaluation, it's major, and when they hit among other things they're hitting internally and not aware of necessarily, when they get to the annihilation or engulfment fears, it can just suddenly rupture in a way that maybe it never did prior. And so sometimes, people's efforts to mend things, to make it work again, even if you've been around that before, there comes a time for many people with BPD, all in their own time and in their own ways, where there just isn't going to be any way to make anything okay again or mend it or get them to come back. And it's really in people's best interest to recognize the reality of the trauma bond relationships and the impossibility, unfortunately, of people with BPD, especially untreated, being able to consistently or congruently remain in relationships when they're often struggling with so much internally and maybe putting that out on you. And also, the commenter said they had both big and small conflicts. And so at some point, people with BPD it's major splitted evaluation, it's all black and white, they paint you all black, and they're gone. And so the commenter continues, however, the situation only seemed to escalate. And they do escalate when you're trying to help them. They do escalate when you're trying to reach them. Because for so many reasons I won't detail here, but I've talked about in other videos. But they have communication issues, awareness deficits, inability to take responsibility, don't understand always their impact on you, whether they know what they're doing or not at certain points when there's all this push-pull conflict going, hot-cold stuff from people with BPD. And so after she became physically aggressive, and this is often also what comes seemingly out of nowhere, or there can be many episodes of that people put up with in relationships, not realizing that can be uber dangerous, but not with all people with BPD, but some. And after she became physically aggressive, the commenter says, towards me, and I stepped back, she unilaterally ended the relationship over a month ago. She now refuses any contact. Well, and I'm really sorry to hear that, she was abusing you that way and aggressive toward you. And unfortunately, when you step back, which makes sense, but when you did that, you're not responsible. Please don't hear me wrong. When you did that, that would heighten her abandonment fear. So she wants to abandon you before you can abandon her, even if that wasn't what you were thinking about or necessarily wanted to have happen. And the commenter says, yet the bond between us feels undeniably real and deep. Yes, I hear you, but most of that is going to be the undeniably real and deep trauma bond, which contains within it fantasy bond, betrayal bond. Person with BPD betrays codependent partner over and over again in different ways, not necessarily monkey branching or cheating, just betrayal after, no responsibility in communication, not being able to repair any kind of rupture, though it sounds like from all of your big and small conflicts, you would find ways forward. Likely the commenter or anyone else that can relate to this, likely you made the concessions, likely you kept stepping down, likely you never got heard or seen, your needs weren't taken into account, but you just kept kind of rolling with that and skipping over like BPD apology, non-apologies, apologies don't mean anything, don't change anything. So you kept sacrificing yourself to try to make it work. And the commenter refers to it as it feels, and that's an interesting statement. So the feeling, right, because what we often feel feels exceedingly real, but might not be accurate to what people have gone through with people with BPD. So yet the bond between us feels undeniably real and deep. We share cherished memories and aligned core values. It's incredibly painful, and I'm struggling to reconcile this profound connection with the current reality of no contact. Commenter continues, based on your experience or insights, how do you suggest I proceed? Well, I really feel for you and anybody that can relate to this, because probably a lot of people can relate to it, however many people come by to hear me here. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like I'm talking to the world out there. But anyway, so the bond between you that feels undeniably real and deep, I hear you. And I don't want to invalidate at all. I can't. You know, your experience of what that means to you, how that feels to you. But just given what you've shared about the relationship and how these relationships do go with all the conflicts and the on and the off and the cold and the hot and the push and the pull of the borderline, like I'll repeat myself, the bond that feels so deep and undeniably real, trauma bond. And then when you say that you share cherished memories and align core values, and then you said it's incredibly painful. Well, yes, and I hear you, and I really feel for you, commenter, and anybody that can relate. And I think that, you know, people after these breakups and after struggling through relationships of lots of conflicts and up and downs and all of that, I'm not going to say that you didn't share some kind of something besides a trauma bond, and that you know, people have cherished memories. There was really good aspects to a lot of these relationships, because people with BPD aren't all the same. So some are going to make it impossible off the hop. It's going to be really quick and devolving and rupturing and a nightmare. And with some people, there's more positive, you know, with some people with BPD. And really, I just want to say about that, it's because people with BPD, identity diffusion, lack of self, they don't know themselves, but they can have astoundingly good parts to them, fragmented parts of the whole of who they really need to go to therapy to become. But you can have really cherished memories, and you can have had really wonderful times with somebody who was a partner with BPD. And then the hard part, right? Because after devaluation, after breakup and relational rupture, however that happens, or a myriad of ways that might happen, like from 1 minute to the next until it's over, and like the person said, you can't get any contact from them right now, and that may stay the same or not, but it's really hard to, most people with BPD don't continue to hold cherished memories after big splitted evaluation, ruptured relationship, and their need to protect themselves going forward. Not from you, not really from the memories, but just the way that people with BPD are always living in this very protected fashion with all kinds of unhealthy, maladaptive coping mechanisms or defense mechanisms. So I don't know about your aligned core values, commenter. I mean, there can be some values that seem to be aligned. The only thing would be, were they really truly values that a person with BPD who doesn't know themselves could hold consistently and really be committed to? And actually, because of your breakup and everything, I would say, The answer was, in this case, no, she couldn't hold them in a consistent, congruent, age-appropriate way. So you might have shared some, but your commitment to your values likely was a commitment that she doesn't really have to her values because of the lack of self-identity fusion and the way that they have, this splitting and the defense against what happened often to them in childhood that's coming into the here and now unconsciously. But the aligned core values probably weren't as strong in her as they were in you, or as lasting. And then the commenter said, it's incredibly painful and I'm struggling to reconcile this profound connection with the current reality of no contact. I hear you, and anyone else that can relate that's in this situation. It's exceedingly painful. It's pulling at a part of yourself that you might feel like you've lost yourself, and then you've lost this person. But the idea that you could try again, or if there's contact, that it would work, I hope you're really giving that some serious thought. Now, thinking about that, applying some logic to that, doesn't mean, because this is the cognitive dissonance, doesn't mean that you're not going to feel an incredible amount of pain. And so my best kind of advice, if I'm not really giving advice here, but I guess, would be to, get working with someone to help you through this process of letting go, of, learning to reconcile the profound, what you're going through right now, cognitive dissonance and etc., that profound connection with the current reality, that you were profoundly connected. Again, a lot of that was trauma bond. And with right now the reality of no contact. Because, that turns people's life upside down. That's very exceedingly painful. It's devastatingly painful. To one degree or another, commenter and anyone that can relate, you probably lost yourself. Doesn't mean you've lost everything about yourself, but you probably are wondering who you are at this point in time, because you're also wondering, who was she? Because she wasn't who you thought she was. It's so painful. I'm out here to work with anybody, by the way, in this healing recovery process, learning to let go, focusing on yourself, finding your own closure. Exceedingly painful. But I would just encourage the commenter or anyone else who's relating to this, don't let all of that pain, which is so I know overwhelming, don't let it drive you back to trying again if you ever hear from her. Don't be open to hearing from her. As much as you want to do that, you're going to get hurt more over and over again. This is the point where she's in no contact, it sounds like, and you're struggling with that. This is where you need to get help to learn to cope with that. This is what you need to go forward, to heal, to recover from codependency, to be able to move forward in your life, to deal with the loss that feels like a death. And it's a lot of emotional work, this healing, to break the trauma bond. And I'm not saying everything about your feeling bonded to this person with BPD, your ex, was about the trauma bond. But it, more than not, and I hear you with the cherished memories, that's true for many people, but you were having aligned values and a lot of connection and sharing that you were doing with somebody that you really didn't know who they were, because they don't know who they are. And based on my experience or insights, how do you, meaning me, suggest that I proceed, says the commenter? It's all about getting into therapy. To the commenter and anybody that relates to this, it's all about doing what feels exceedingly impossible right now, because you're in so much pain, your feelings are all over the place, you are heartbroken, devastated, your world might be turned upside down, you've lost part of yourself. This person isn't really who you thought that she was. And that doesn't mean there weren't fragments of her there. But in the arrested emotional development, that still explains BPD to the best of what people go through, whether it's real abandonment and trauma in their childhood or perceived abandonment and not trauma in their childhood. The actual or perceived abandonment creates the dilemma and the difficulty in relating and communicating and responsibility taking due to loss of self in people with BPD. So commenter, my best insight and what I would suggest how you proceed is working with someone to begin the process of learning how to cope with the pain you're in right now and how to learn to work through, to letting go, to grieving, to detaching, to accepting that it's over, dealing with all that loss, looking at any codependency, family of origin issues, healing from the codependency, and most important of all, breaking the trauma bond. And nobody feels like doing it. Because you probably right now feel like you just need to get her back. You want to get her back. You want to try again. You want to help her. You tried to mend things before. It's been up and down all over the place. You've hung in there. You've worked so hard to make it work. But the part that maybe you're not as aware of, I don't know, is that a lot of that was trauma bond. A lot of that was you overgiving, you abandoning you, trying to help her stay afloat. She doesn't know who she is. And I really don't like delivering this message, but commenter, you may know a lot of things about parts of her, fragments of her. She's not a whole person. She doesn't have an identity and an own self. And so you saw flashes of amazing, I'm sure, but now you have to work at detaching and letting that go. And it's a process that isn't a do-it-yourself process. People really need support, further education, and to be helped through not only grief and loss, but how to break the trauma bond. Where does that go back to in your childhood, and how to do that healing? And I'm out here to work with people that resonate with me in that process. And I hope that what I said, though it's not what people want to hear, if you can relate, or to the commenter, really feel for you, and just hope that you can, at least in your mind, know that what I'm saying to you right now is really the best information for you to follow from your head first, because your heart's going to take a long time to catch up. But if you don't accept the no contact now and initiate your own no contact and get into a healing recovery process, there's really no way forward. But if you could contact her again, circles of cycles of being more hurt, more of the big and maybe not so big conflicts that you had prior. Because until and unless she goes to therapy for like 8, 10, 15 years, and even then, you're not going to be able to find again ever a connection to this person, because she's not who you thought she was. You could, if she would, get in touch with you and you think that you would want to try again, then you would get the rush of intermittent reinforcement, a lot of false promises, or even maybe promises she could make you that she really gets it now, really cares, will go to therapy, will try harder. But so much damage has been done, and it doesn't work. And that's the ultimate agony people have to face in accepting it's ended. It's done. You tried probably exceedingly hard, and you were probably trying to overcome all the obstacles, not only maybe of your own codependency, but of what the person with BPD was struggling with. But they don't know who they are, so you can't know who they are. You might see glimpses of who they could be and were meant to be, but they need a lot of therapy to get there. And then once you've kind of been scorched earth and so hurt and traumatized, whether they get help in the future or not, you need to get into your own healing recovery journey so that you can see your way forward and learn through the process of this loss to accept that it's over. And I know that right now emotionally, maybe you can hear me logically, but emotionally you're probably thinking, oh, no, that's not what I want to do at all. That's not how I feel at all. But at this juncture for people, it's important to follow your logic in your head, not your heart, because your emotions need so much processing. Many people with codependency don't even know how to deal with their emotional landscape, how to deal with their own emotions, feel them, grieve, process, learn more about yourself. How did you get there in the first place? And even if you have had, like this commenter says, wonderful times with a person with BPD, there's certainly the commiserate opposite and the fact of how the relationship ended and why. And often when the person with BPD is hard no contact right after the rupture and etc., it's not across the board, they're not all the same, but many of them are not going to hoover back. Some might, but many won't. And whether they might or they absolutely won't, you can't know that right now, but this is your opportunity to learn a whole lot more about yourself, to heal codependency, to heal childhood woundedness, to find out how you got there in the first place, to deal with the loss, and to heal, and to break the trauma bond. And I'm not just saying the relationship was only a trauma bond necessarily always, because not everybody with BPD or codependency is the same. But that's what you need to do, commenter. That's the best I have to offer. Probably not what anybody in your shoes, your situation, your agony, your pain right now wants to hear. But it's truly what people do need. So I hope that was helpful to the commenter and anybody else that might have resonated with it. It is always the same message from me. At least I'm going to be consistent when there's so much inconsistency out there, even among professionals and whatnot, as another video I put up talked about. So you really need to go no contact yourself, commenter, not look for contact, and start the long process. Well, not that, exceedingly long, but the difficult, gut-wrenching process of working this through, accepting that it's over, grieving it, learning more about yourself, healing codependency and any woundedness from childhood, and being able to move forward as a strong individuated individual with no codependency and none of what was your woundedness that got you into this relationship and kept you there fighting for it, likely at times against all odds. And in the fact that it's kind of ruptured over no contact from her right now, it wasn't ever really going to work out or last, unfortunately. And by the way, to the commenter and anyone else that relates to this, when people with BPD do this and it's ruptured and they ghost or discard and they go no contact, it's not your fault. Please at least know it's not your fault. There was nothing you could have done better. There was nothing you could have done different. There's nothing that you did that caused this. This is the struggle of people with BPD, largely untreated. It's a relational disorder among many other ways we could describe it. So please know my best answer to you is get into therapy, get working with someone. I'm out here to work with those I resonate with. And it's a grieving, letting go, learning to focus on and learning more about yourself and finding your own closure, breaking the trauma bond process.